been listening to my parents argue since before I can even remember. And I mean literally. It didn't take them long to realize there was something different about me. Their son. As soon as I learned to talk, which happened pretty fast, I'd recount things we did yesterday or last week with incredible detail. My parents thought I was some genius, and oddly enough, it made them pause their arguments. See, I didn't even know that constant bickering wasn't normal. It was all I'd ever known. But I noticed the stark difference when I started hanging out at my friend's place. Their parents smiled. Their homes felt cozy, while mine seemed cold and gloomy. So, I figured the best way to make my parents act like those happy families was to keep wowing them with my memory. Trouble was, my amazing recall started to become a hindrance. Sometimes I couldn't focus in school because my mind was too cluttered with memories. Yesterday, last week, last month, even years ago. I was pretty certain I could recall every single day of my life, just like your favorite childhood memory. One day, my parents decided it was time for me to meet my aunt and cousin, who lived just an hour away. Funny thing was, for most of my childhood, they acted like it was too far to visit. I blurted out that we'd been there when I was a baby as we drove. My dad shot me a surprised look, while my mom yelled at him to keep his eyes on the road. "What do you mean?" Dad asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. We went down these streets, and we visited a lady's house. She had cats everywhere. My parents fell silent for a long moment. "We can't remember that far back," Mom finally said, shaking her head. "It's impossible. How else would he know those details?" Dad turned to Mom, searching for an explanation. "We must have shown him a picture of Aunt Brooklyn's house, but we didn't. I just remembered it. I insisted before getting distracted." Other memories from that day flooded back, though they were a bit fuzzy. I guess because I didn't have the words back then to make sense of everything. But one memory stood out vividly. My mom crying on the way there and back, her sobs echoing in the car. The sound of it made me tear up too. That memory stuck with me, almost overshadowing our arrival at Aunt Brooklyn's. Mom seemed upset as we approached the door. "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing," she replied tersely. "Let's go see your aunt." Aunt Brooklyn turned out to be great. My cousin Logan. Well, he was okay, I guess. At that age, boys were kind of gross to me. But my parents couldn't stop gushing about how handsome he was and how quickly he was growing up. Handsome. Gross. 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 I quickly grew bored. The whole house smelled like a litter box. And my mind kept drifting back to the memories, replaying the sounds of my mom's cries mixed with my own baby wails. "What's wrong with you?" Logan asked, breaking into my thoughts. "You seem totally out of it." "Whatever," I mumbled. "I'm bored. Let's check out the attic." Finally, something exciting. Logan warned me to be quiet as we snuck away from our parents. We crept up the narrow, slippery staircase, the darkness swallowing us whole. I hesitated, feeling like I was in a horror movie. As I crawled up, I couldn't see where I was stepping, and I slipped, tumbling back down the stairs. Pain shot through my leg, and tears welled up in my eyes. Parents rushed me to the hospital, but I protested through my tears. I don't want to go to the hospital. "It's too bright there." "You've never been to the hospital before," my father said, puzzled. "No, when we were there before, it was too bright and everything was cold," I insisted, trying to make him understand. But he looked even more confused. I struggled to explain. It was like trying to describe a dream. It was dark and warm, and then it was like opening a window in a snowstorm. Suddenly, it was so white, and I was cold, but Mom was holding me. My mother's expression shifted as she turned to me. "Are you talking about when you were born?" she asked softly, her face pale. "That must be it." I nodded eagerly, relieved that someone understood, but her reaction surprised me. "Don't ever say that again," she snapped, her voice sharp with fear. "No one remembers when they were born. Lying is wrong." I felt hurt and scared, so I fell silent, burying the memory deep inside. At the hospital, the brightness was just as I remembered, but it wasn't cold. The pain of getting my broken leg casted was real, and I longed for my mother's comfort. But I was afraid she was still angry with me. In the following weeks, I mostly forgot about the incident, as I focused on adjusting to life with a broken leg. But something had shifted. Whenever I shared memories with my parents, they'd correct me. "No, you didn't wear the pink dress. It was green," my mother would insist. It felt like they were trying to prove me wrong. to discredit my memories. "Stop lying," my mother began to accuse me, her tone growing harsher with each incident. "You have a serious problem." My dad didn't argue. He always took her side. As time passed, I began to doubt myself. What if all my memories were just figments of my imagination? What if I was losing my grip on reality? One day, my worst fears seemed to materialize, or maybe they had been lurking all along. My parents dropped a bombshell. They were taking me to see a psychiatrist. They claimed I was a pathological liar and needed help. It was like they'd flipped a switch, going from thinking I was a genius to branding me as crazy. I wanted to bolt, to escape this sudden judgment, but where could I possibly go? So, reluctantly, I went along with them to the psychiatrist's office. As my parents aired their grievances about my alleged lying, I wanted to shout out in protest, to scream that their accusations were baseless. But when the psychiatrist turned to me for my side of the story, fear kept me silent. I couldn't bring myself to contradict my parents. And so, I just sat there, feeling powerless as my fate was decided for me. I was prescribed a medication that left me perpetually drowsy, robbing me of my once perfect memory. School became a struggle, my grades plummeting. Worse still, I started to internalize my parents' words. Maybe I was truly losing my grip on reality. What if I never got better and ended up confined to a mental institution? With no siblings to corroborate my memories, I felt utterly alone. My mother had always resented her sister, wanting an only child, and now I felt the full weight of that isolation. Loneliness consumed me, and depression settled in like a heavy fog. By the time I reached high school, I felt like a mere shadow of myself. The medication dulled my senses, and I drifted through my days like a ghost. But then, one morning, I forgot to take my pill, and something miraculous happened. I had a great day at school. For once, I could concentrate, impressing my teachers with my newfound focus. During my speech class, which I had been dreading, I astonished myself by delivering a flawless performance without relying on my note cards. It was like I had tapped into a wellspring of hidden potential. After class, my teacher pulled me aside, suggesting I join the debate team. A prestigious opportunity to travel and compete with other schools across the state. She thought it would be good for me, I mumbled, contemplating the days when Logan left me too exhausted to think straight, and the lies my mind seemed to conjure up effortlessly. What if I stepped up to debate at a tournament only to spew out pure BS? I couldn't take that risk. "I have to go," I insisted, then bolted home, hoping to avoid further discussion. But the teacher's persistence wore me down. She kept asking daily until I finally relented and agreed to attend a debate club meeting. Before going, I skipped Logan again, hoping to clear the fog that clouded my thoughts. If I could think clearly, I could prevent myself from telling lies. I half expected to be ostracized by the other kids like I was in the rest of school. But to my surprise, they welcomed me with open arms. I flourished in the club, feeling more alive than I had in a long time. And before I knew it, I stopped taking Logan altogether. Of course, I couldn't tell my parents about my newfound passion, so I fibbed and said I was staying after school for tutoring. At my first match against another school, I felt ready to conquer the world, until I saw my opponent. It was none other than my cousin, Logan. I barely recognized him. We hadn't seen each other since the night I broke my leg. We caught up before the match, reminiscing about old times. He was surprisingly friendly and easy to talk to. We even shared a laugh watching my story animated on my phone. But when it was time to take the stage, we switched to competitive mode. The match was intense, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. At first, I held my own, but then my hyperactive memory started to interfere. I remembered details from our pre-match conversation, distracting me from the task. Focus. I scolded myself inwardly. You can't afford to lose this. Ultimately, the judge declared me the winner, and I felt a surge of excitement. But as Logan asked me where I planned to display my ribbon, my elation faded. I realized I had nowhere to put it, a poignant reminder of the secrets I was forced to keep from my parents. If my parents caught sight of that ribbon, I'd be in serious trouble, I muttered, my heart sinking at the thought. My mood somber. Logan noticed my sadness and offered to cheer me up. It was a good match, he said, extending an invitation for ice cream. We spent the evening together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. As Logan shared his plans to study political science in college, I realized I hadn't even begun to think about my own future. What career path could a supposed crazy, lying freak like me pursue? Logan complimented my memorization skills, praising my performance in the debate. It felt incredible to have someone appreciate my memory for once, instead of viewing it as a symptom of illness. Feeling a strong connection with Logan, I found myself reluctant to return home. We agreed to stay in touch and help each other with our debating skills via video chat. Even though you're my rival, Logan teased with a grin. Our friendship blossomed, and whenever we crossed paths at another match, we'd spend the evening catching up. Our conversations veered towards our crushes. Logan confessed to liking the president of the Spanish club at his school, while I admitted to having feelings for a baseball player. I don't even know how to kiss, I confessed, feeling embarrassed by my lack of social experience. I've had, zero social life until now. Logan chuckled, remarking on the irony of relying on our cousin for social interactions. And it's even more unfortunate that you don't know how to kiss. You can practice with me if you want, he teased, though I knew he was joking. Disgusting, I exclaimed, playing along despite my curiosity. We're cousins. Logan burst into laughter at my reaction, then playfully challenged me. Would you do it if I dared you? We bantered back and forth, the idea lingering between us. As a prank, I leaned in close, pretending to go for a kiss, just to see his reaction. We both pulled away, collapsing with laughter like a pair of hyenas. I spat and rubbed my mouth, noticing Logan doing the same. It was odd, though. Despite the prank, I felt a strange connection with him. Not a crush, exactly, but more like a sense of destined friendship. It was kind of pathetic that my cousin was my closest friend, but as I walked home that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of euphoria. However, my elation came crashing down when I saw my mom waiting for me at home, holding up my medicine bottle and shaking it. Explain this, she demanded, her tone laced with anger. You should be almost done with this bottle by now. We need to refill it. Why is it still full? I debated making an excuse, but considering my mom already thought I was a chronic liar, I opted for honesty. I thought you were getting better, she exclaimed, her disappointment palpable. But now your lying has reached a whole new level. We're going back to the psychiatrist. No, Mom, please. I pleaded desperately. I'm finally happy. I feel so much better without the Logan. I can think more clearly, but my protests fell on deaf ears. The Logan are helping you, she insisted. They keep your condition under control. Feeling helpless, I watched as my mom forbade me from returning to the debate club or seeing Logan ever again. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized that all the good things in my life were slipping away. Amidst my sobs, a distant memory resurfaced, clear as day. I recalled being just a baby, held in my mother's arms, crying inconsolably as she carried me away from Aunt Brooklyn's house. In that moment, it felt like my heart was breaking. My mom's grip on my arm tightened, but then she looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and she let me go. The sound of our shared tears echoed in my mind, bringing the memory into sharp focus. As we drove away from Aunt Brooklyn's place, I noticed something different in the car. Not just Mom and Dad in the front seats, but an empty space next to me, where another baby carrier had been just moments ago. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at my mother, her tears flowing too freely to speak. Then it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Logan was my brother. I remember, I exclaimed, unable to contain the realization. We were born together. You held us both. Stop, my mother screamed, her voice breaking with emotion. But I couldn't stop now. You took us to Aunt Brooklyn's, but you only brought me home. You're lying, I accused, my own voice rising with anger and confusion. No, I refused to back down. Suddenly, my father's voice broke through the tension. It's time to tell her, he said firmly. I turned to him, my eyes pleading for answers. Tell me what? I demanded. And then they told me. They told me how my mom had desperately wished for only one child when they learned she was pregnant with twins. They made secret arrangements to give one of the babies to Aunt Brooklyn, who couldn't have children of her own. The weight of that decision weighed heavily on my mom, driving her into a deep depression. But despite her turmoil, she couldn't resist the need to see her other child. That's why we went to see Aunt Brooklyn that night. But after that, her guilt consumed her. She knew she had to do something to keep me from remembering the truth, to protect me from the pain of that knowledge. It was hard to wrap my head around it all. My mother's lies had shaped so much of my life, ruining so many moments. But as I looked at her, I saw the pain etched into her features, and I realized she had been hurt too. We both had. I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet, but in that moment, I understood that she truly loved me, even if the burden of her secret had prevented her from showing it until now. And with her promise to confront Aunt Brooklyn and Logan, to mend our fractured family, I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other again.